I want to thank each and every one of you from the press for being here today. In 2002, Congressman Jones, I represent the 3rd District of North Carolina, the home of Camp Lejeune and Cherry Point Marine Air Station. In 2002, I was notified by Connie Gruber, whose husband was a co-pilot of the B-22 Osprey that crashed on April the 8th of the year 2000. 19 Marines were killed. In addition, from that notice from Connie Gruber about trying to do my best to work with she and the wife of the pilot. The pilot was John Brown. His wife Trish is to my right, Connie's to my left. This was a long journey. Today, though, we were fortunate enough after 14 years to get Robert Work, now retired Assistant Secretary of Defense, to issue a 6-page letter to vindicate the pilot and co-pilot who were unfairly blamed for the accident in a Marine press release that said the pilot's rush to complete the mission might have been the fatal flaw. Today, I'm also pleased to have Mark Zaid, who represents the James Madison Project. And the order today will be, I'm going to introduce in just about 1 minute Trish Brown. Her husband again was the pilot, John Brown. And then after Trish speaks, then Connie Gruber, whose husband was the co-pilot, Major Brooks Gruber. Then I'll come back and make very brief comments, maybe 3 or 4 minutes, and then introduce Mark Zaid, who will then speak and explain why we're going to the federal courts to get additional information. With that, this has been a long journey. It's been a spiritual journey. Many prayers from all of us. The prayers were answered. One other, Mike Brown and John Brown, the sons of the pilot, and Trish Brown are also here today. So with that, I'm going to let Trish go ahead and make comments. We 3 of us, Connie and Trish and myself, we're plaintiffs, and their sons are plaintiffs as well in this lawsuit to get all the information out on before the accident happened, communications between the Marine Corps leadership and after the accident happened. So we'll get more into detail on that. With that, now I'm going to ask Trish Brown to let me move forward to the side and she will speak.
Hi, I'm Trish Brown from California, Maryland. I thank you guys for coming. I would rather not be here today. My children were 7 and 8 when this happened. They should not have to have to grow up without a father and then have me up on Capitol Hill every so often to continue to fight this battle. We are very grateful to the Congressman for taking on this battle and for Deputy Secretary of Defense Work for finally clearing the pilot's name last year. It should not have taken this much effort to clear something that gentlemen's names that was not their problem in the first place. To be blamed for the death of 18 other people is horrendous. To have the knock on the door at 5 a.m. is horrendous. But to have to fight this battle for many years later is ridiculous. So I thank you people for being here today, and I appreciate y'all carrying our story forward. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Connie Gruber. I'm from Jacksonville, and I'd just like to tell you all that we're a very proud Marine family. We support the mission of the Marine Corps, but we do feel that in this time, as Trish said, what we're asking for is full, transparent disclosure of all the facts in this very state. And we ask that for our children. We ask that for grandchildren, that these pilots will never know. We also ask it for the history of nuclear aviation. And that's all we want. We want the truth to be told. I'd like to thank Congressman Jones for the bottom of our heart and that strong leader that he is, the true man of integrity and an example is Congressman Jones. And we appreciate that. I would like to say for 2 years, I contacted everyone in really, we didn't get any answers about the residents. That's when I began to ask the questions. Because I knew right then that wasn't all there was to the story. So Congressman Jones worked diligently for 14 years to help us get the truth. That year, my daughter was 16. She was 8 months old at the time of the accident. And that we said it was the best Sweet 16 present she could have had. But it's not the full truth. Now we're here to support Congressman Jones and his efforts on our behalf to make that happen. And we feel that that's appropriate and that we should move forward to it, and we appreciate it. Thank you.
Just a couple more points before I introduce Mark Zaid. And certainly when Mark finishes, we'll take any questions of the wives as well as myself regarding this issue of the lawsuit. I was here at the time that this crash took place. I remember the pressure from the Marine Corps. The fact was that they felt that they did not get approval of the B-22, that this would make a huge difference in a negative way about the future of helicopters in the Marine Corps. Dick Cheney was the Secretary of Defense at the time. He was not in support of the B-22. In fact, he thought it was not a safe technology. I'm not speaking for Dick Cheney, but he was not in favor of continuing the program. So there was a lot of pressure on the Marine Corps. A lot of mistakes had been made. Mike Wallace wrote a story on 60 Minutes at the time that showed where they were manipulating the information regarding the safety and some of the other information being done by the Marine Corps. I will never forget Mike Wallace used in the story about the B-22. This happened right after this accident, where the General Amos emailed General McCorkle. Did not have anything to do with the B-22 crash, but what it did do, it was about maintenance records. And Amos said in the email, I have it right here, that you can't cheat on this. How in the world can leaders of any organization, even in a joking way, use the word cheat? So that was the atmosphere at the time. The Marine Corps would do anything they could to save the program. That is why we believe sincerely that any communications, I wrote a FOIA request. That's another reason we're here today. In that FOIA request, I made the request, please send to me any communications 5 months before the accident between McCorkle and Amos, anyone else in Marine leadership regarding the Osprey. Then after the crash on April the 8th of the year 2000, I wanted information that maybe had been sent, email, letters, or whatever, between McCorkle and Amos. We got a one-pager back that I am going to show you real quickly, and then I'm going to introduce Mark Zaid. This is my letter to FOIA, 2 pages. I just told you what I asked for. Let me show you what they sent back to me. 1 page. A program that was threatened to end, and I asked for information of communications between the top 2 Marine generals before the crash and after the crash, and what do I get? A 1-pager. 3 emails heavily redacted. What did 60 Minutes get? A full page where the word cheat is used in it. So when I got that information, a 1-page back, I contacted Mark Zaid and James Madison Project. I met Mark years ago. And I sent it up to Mark Zaid, who's here today. I'm speaking about 2 minutes. And I said, Mark, what can I do? These families deserve an end to this story. And if you don't get an end to the story, you'll never fully understand why the Marine Corps never issued a letter to exonerate John Brown, Brooks Gruber. It took a retired Marine named Robert Work as Assistant Secretary of Defense to issue the 6-page letter. So because the Marine Corps was never helpful in trying to bring peace to John Brown and Brooks Gruber and their families, I felt it necessary to try to get the truth out of what kind of manipulation, what was going on behind the scenes that we never knew about. And I do this for the 19 Marines and their families who died. So with that, at this time, Mark Zaid is going to explain what we're trying to do legally, and then we'll take questions for you. Mark, please come forward.
Thank you, Congressman. Thanks, everyone, for being here. Let me tell you a little bit how this is working. So, my law firm is representing all the plaintiffs who are behind, along with Brad Moss, my law partner, and also the James Madison Project, which is an organization that Brad and I run that deals with secrecy issues and reducing secrecy and promoting transparency and government accountability. So this morning we filed a FOIA lawsuit against the Department of Defense, which is 3 components that are targeted. One's the Marine Corps, the other's the Navy, and then the third is the Department of Defense's Office of Inspector General. They each received the same FOIA request back in June. Part of it encompassed what the Congressman talked about with the correspondence between General McCorkle and General Amos. Additionally, we're looking for all the investigative records pertaining to the crash from 2000, and particularly correspondence or internal documentation that involved the Congressman in all the years that he was making an effort to find out what was going on. What was the discussion inside the Pentagon? You know, I want to tell you a little bit about why this case is so, let's say, special. Right? FOIA, the Freedom of Information Act, is a statutory provision. Any one of you could file the same FOIA request that they did and obtain the same information. But the fact that the family members of those who lost their lives in this crash and a sitting U.S. Congressman who's in the majority had to file a FOIA lawsuit to get access to this information is absolutely despicable. And the Defense Department, I hope, will cooperate with us in providing this information in a very timely manner. We've been assigned to Judge Kolar Catelli here in the District of Columbia. The case number is 17-0230. If you give me your email address, I can send you a copy of the complaint very easily through my phone. Through that, it gives you the details on what we have actually requested as well. The timeline is once this gets mailed out to the Department of Defense today, so it'll show up at their doorstep in the next few days. The DoD will have 30 days to answer the complaint. The judge will then set a briefing schedule, a production schedule. We'll negotiate that with the government, and we'll start the process of seeing what can we obtain from the government for these families and the Congressman that couldn't have been obtained voluntarily from the department over the years or through the legislative process. I think with that, I'm good. If anyone has any questions for anybody here, I'd be happy to take them.
Does anyone have any questions of Connie or Trish or Mark or myself at this time? Who would you like to speak to?
Either Connie or Trish, or both. Hi. Tara Kopp, Military Times.
Thank you, Tara, for all
Tara,
your work.
thank you for being here. Thanks.
Sure thing. It's been a long journey for both of you, and getting the letter last year with the exoneration I thought was closure, but it doesn't seem like you have closure yet. A lot of people would ask, why continue to push for this? What is it that you still need answers on?
So this is government at its basics. You have checks and balances. Congress is supposed to, the military is not its own branch. I guess it is a branch, but it's under the president. Right now they are not answering to Congress. Simple. Answer to your Congress or to your congressman. And they are not doing that, and they have not done that since 2002. I would, well, 2000, but I would walk on fire for this man because he did get because along with you and several other reporters, get our husbands' names cleared. I would walk on fire for him. I would like to not be here, to not continue this fight when it comes with a personal price emotionally for all of us. But it's basic government. The Marine Corps should be held accountable to someone.
Go ahead. Chris Kelly from Tokyo Newspaper. How do you feel about, there have been continued safety concerns with the Osprey and some of the same problems with these repeated hard landings. How do you feel about the safety of the Osprey? Do you feel that it's improved, or do you have concerns for military families going forward?
I never want anyone else to go through what we have. I'm hoping our military leaders are taking care of that. They say the numbers are safer. I'm hoping they're right.
That's the issue we have. We feel that for our husbands, they were not in a safe situation. And as we know, after the second accident, not after the first, after their accident in April, only after the second accident was the aircraft sent back to its manufacturers. And at that time, it was nearly 2 years before it was operational again, development with the Marine Corps. So our husbands didn't have fathers. As Trish said, we're all accountable to someone. And that's what we're asking for, accountability. From our accident, the months before, as the Congressman said, and the months after. We just want the full disclosure of all the facts.
To that point, many years ago when I started helping Trish and Connie, we started moving forward. Again, it took 14 years. A friend of mine who supported what we were trying to do sent me a quote from Voltaire. He said, "We owe the living respect, we owe the dead the truth." All this is about. John Brown, Trish Gruber, 17 Marines in the back, paid a hell of a price for this program. Whatever, if anything, was done behind the scenes by the Marine Corps, but they made a decision, we're going to show Secretary Cheney what this plane can do. So we're going to have this mission over Marana, Arizona, where they were going to go in and go into the airport like they were rescuing people overseas, show them the greatness of the V-22. The V-22 was not ready for that mission. And yet 17 Marines in the back. I will never forget Commandant Jim Jones as we started this journey. It's in my office. He was the commandant at the time. And he said to me, he said, when I got the call that 19 Marines had been killed, he said, I was upset and mad and wanted to know what in the hell were the 17 doing in the back. That's what he said. So a lot of things were being done behind the scenes that we don't know about. That I think that any evidence of anything that happened, not saying anything illegal, but the manipulation to justify and save a program, I think they're children, and history has a right to know it. That's what this is all about. There be another question? Yes, ma'am.
I'm Bill Zaka from UK Shippo, which is Okinawa newspaper in Japan. And there are 2 accidents in Okinawa. It's related to Okinawa. Last December, there was a crash northern part of Okinawa. And this year, in August, there was a crash in the coast side of Australia. And both aircraft belong to Denmark Air Base, which is in Okinawa. And of course, the crash happened again and again, and it sacrifices not only servicemen, it could happen to the residents of the local community near the Marine Corps base. So, what do you think that, or they just should be, they have to stop trying the AV-22? It's kind of different.
Real quickly, from my point of view, I think there's still some very legitimate questions about the B-22 Osprey. You gave some examples. I have a young man that I nominated who went to Annapolis that was in a B-22 crash in Hawaii a year or so ago. He was a co-pilot at the time. One person was killed as a crew member, which is sad. I still think there are questions. It is a very interesting technology. And many of those aeronautical engineers still believe, which I'm not one obviously, that there are too many questions still need to be answered. Any more questions? Well, let me thank each and every one of you for being here today. I hope you will follow the lawsuit that's being filed. This is all about truth and integrity, and dead men cannot defend themselves. Certainly the two pilots cannot tell the story of what it was in that cockpit. Everybody I've ever talked to that's been a helo pilot said that it is a panic situation in the best of terms, and yet when you've got an issue that you can't understand because you've not been trained, and the Marine Corps didn't understand it to train them, then it had to be a very desperate situation. John Brown pushed Gruber. So this is all about continuing to bring an end to the story, but I think this part of it is very, very important. So thank you so much for being here today, and really do appreciate it. Thank you.
So if anybody wants an individual interview, we can hang around, you can talk to the families, and if you want to give me your email, I'll send you a copy of the complaint.
Has been, says has been on